welcome back.
Yeah, man, how you doing? You know you like that.
All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Math Talk with Mr. Faison. And I'm Mr. Faison, or Mr. Faison. As long as you know, today we're working on multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. All right. Now, in normal cases, I would throw on the gloves because you know that means it's time for business. But believe it or not, I broke one of my gloves. And I was going to throw on one glove, like, you know what I'm saying, like the king of pop, like my man Mike Jack, hit him with the spin and all of that, you feel me? But I just decided to not even put on the gloves and get started with the lesson. So, what we're looking at is when multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers, if there's an odd amount of negatives, the answer will be negative. Now, what does that mean? Let's do some examples and find out. Look at problem number 1, right? I said when multiplying and dividing, this is only for multiplying and dividing. When multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers, if there is an odd amount of negatives, then the answer will be negative. So when I look here, I look at this, problem number 1, it's negative 30 divided by 3. There's an odd amount of negatives because we know odd numbers is 1, 3, 5, 7, so on and so forth. Those are odd numbers, okay? So there's an odd amount of negatives in this problem, so I know my answer is going to be negative. And 30 divided by 3 is 10. So it would be negative 10. I look here, negative 2 times 10. Now, what I want to do is, hold on, before we move forward, I want to double back and I want to make sure something is clear with y'all. Because we're used to seeing a regular term of this being a sign for division. But this right here also represents division as well. That line right there, it's almost like the fraction line, but that represents division as well. These parentheses that you see, that represents multiplication. Sometimes we're used to seeing the X as a sign of multiplication, but this also represents multiplication as well. Just so we know that and we're clear. Now, let's jump back into the problem. So we're looking at negative 2 times 10. Now, there's once again an odd amount of negatives in this problem. There's only one negative in this problem. So I know my answer is going to be negative. And we know 2 times 10 is 20. So we have negative 20 as the answer. Let's jump down to problem number 3. We look at negative 5 times 3 times negative 2 times negative 1. Once again, if I look, I have 1, 2, 3. That's 3 negatives in this problem. That's an odd amount of negatives, meaning my answer is going to be negative. So all we got to do is multiply. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 times 2 is 30. 30 times 1 is still 30. So we have negative 30 as our answer, okay? The question is, what do we do when it's an even amount of negatives in the problem? Let's see. All right, there we go. So now, what we're looking at is, when multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers, if there is an even amount of negatives, the answer will be positive. What does that look like? Let's check out the examples. We look at example number 1, negative 6 times negative 4. Once again, you see this little dot in the middle, that's not a decimal. You see that dot, that represents multiplication. That's just another symbol for multiplying. So we have negative 6 times negative 4. We said an even amount. If there's an even amount of negatives, then the answer will be positive. So remember, even numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, right? So on and so forth. So negative 6, negative 4. We know that's an even amount because it's 2. So we understand our answer is going to be positive. 6 times 4 is 24. It's going to be a positive 24. We look here, negative 100 divided by negative 25. Once again, that's an even amount. So we understand that our answer is going to be positive. 100 divided by 25 is 4. Answer is going to be 4. We drop down to problem number 3. First thing I want to look at is how many negatives do I have in that problem? I have 4. So I understand that that's going to be an even amount of negatives in that problem, meaning my answer is going to be positive. Now I just have to worry about multiplying all of those numbers. 6 times 2 is 12. 12 times 1 is still 12. 12 times another one is still 12. So we have a positive 12. Now, before we go, what I want to do is I want to throw a different type of problem in there. If you don't mind, throw it on the board for me. There we go. So this is the problem we're looking at. Now, remember, we got to go through everything we talked about. First, I want y'all to remember this line in the middle means division. These parentheses, and you see them in this close of vicinity, that means multiply. First thing we want to see is up top. We're going to handle that first. So we understand we're multiplying up top. Negative 6 times 5 times negative 1. There's an even amount of negatives at the top. So we understand that this up top is going to be positive. 6 times 5 is 30, times 1 is going to still be 30. And we drop down to the bottom. We have 3 times negative 2. There's only one negative in here. So it's going to be a negative 6. Now what we're looking at is 30 divided by negative 6. We're looking, and it's only one negative, and it's just in that 6. So I know my answer is going to be negative. 30 divided by 6 is 5. My answer is going to be negative 5. So that's how you attack those kind of problems, and those are problems that you will see, right? Especially my students. Hey, look, man, this is another episode of Math Talk with Mr. Faison, and I'm Mr. Faison, and we just knocked out multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. I'm going to catch y'all next time. Ooh.
God's plan. God's plan.